Now, foreign ministers from around the world will attend the G20 summit, which is taking place in India's national capital, New Delhi. The two-day summit, starting from today, is taking place in the shadow of Russia's war in Ukraine and the spiraling US-China tensions. The foreign ministers of member nations have started arriving in New Delhi to attend the meet. Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov arrived in New Delhi for G20 foreign ministers meeting. He will also be attending the Raisina Dialogue 2023. The Russian Foreign Ministry released a statement before Lavrov's visit to New Delhi, which said, and I'm quoting here, "We support India's G20 presidency and its commitment to promote a unifying agenda that will restore confidence in multilateral diplomacy and prevent fragmentation of the global economy." U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be reaching New Delhi later today as well. According to U.S. top officials, Blinken will underscore the damage that Russia's war of aggression has caused and further urge nations to redouble calls for Russia to end the war. Besides Lavrov, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs Under-Secretary has also arrived in New Delhi. Taking to Twitter, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said that the arrivals for the first G20 India Foreign Ministers meeting have begun. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar also announced the arrival of Turkey's Foreign Minister to India. Both the ministers discussed bilateral relations on the sidelines of the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. Taking to Twitter, Turkish Foreign Minister said that he met with India's External Affairs Minister and had thanked him for Operation Dost, which is the search and rescue operation initiated by India for the earthquake-hit Turkey and Syria. A meeting of foreign ministers of the Quad countries, that is the United States, India, Australia and Japan, is also scheduled to be held on the sidelines of the G20 Foreign Ministers meet. Now, for more on this, our principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal has sent us this report. Listen in.
Delhi from today will be the global diplomatic capital for 2 days as the foreign ministers of the 20 countries who are part of the G20 grouping will take part in the foreign ministers meeting. Now, India has also invited other countries as well, and focus will be reforming of multilateral institutions like the UN, counter-terrorism, global scale mapping, development cooperation, food and security issues as well. But essentially, we know that the Russia-Ukraine conflict is going to dominate the agenda. We know that at the finance ministers meeting in Bangalore, there was no joint communique because of the divide between West and Russia, supported by China over certain paragraphs, and India issued a statement. Now, we know that India plays an important part as the host of the grouping, and it's up to India how it is able to bridge the divide between the two sides. But essentially, India will be also being the voice of the global South, will focus on how issues and impacts of the conflict like price rise can be discussed and raised, and perhaps a solution can be provided on them. With video journalist Chandrasekhar, Siddhant Sibal for WION in New Delhi.
Now, for more on this, we're joined by Atman Trivedi, who is the Senior Vice President of Albright Stonebridge Group, as well as Senior Fellow at Atlantic Council. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Like I mentioned, two-day summit starting today. It's taking place in the shadow of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as well as growing US-China tensions. What do you think are going to be some of the key issues on the agenda for this meet?
Well, I think as Siddhant Sibal previewed, the Ukraine-Russia conflict is really going to take center stage. As you noted earlier, the situation there between Ukraine and Russia really hampered the ability to arrive at a consensus at the finance ministers meeting that took place in Bangalore last week. These issues are front and center as we get to the 1 year plus anniversary of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and so much remains unsettled. It seems like the conflict has no end in sight, as neither seems able to achieve its objectives. but neither side seems exhausted. So India's challenge will be to not have that conflict really take up all the oxygen in the room when the foreign ministers convene.
Right, absolutely. In fact, I was just going to come to this, that India's position through this invasion has been very clear. What sort of challenges do you think India will face?
India is going to get pulled in a number of different directions. India has tried to take a very careful, restrained position and not align itself with the West necessarily, but also not align itself with Russia. And India finds itself caught between the two poles in this conflict, and its own interests may dictate in favor of trying to continue taking this neutral approach. But the question is, will it be able to sustain it given all of the pressure that's being applied by various sides, most strongly coming from the West?
Right, absolutely. And of course, I mentioned this earlier, a meeting of foreign ministers of the Quad countries is also expected to take place on the sidelines. What are some of the other global issues that are likely to feature in these discussions?
I think China will be in the elephant in the room when the Quad countries get together. U.S.-China tensions within the Quad are nearing an all-time high, not seen over the last 4+ decades. The balloon incident near the U.S., combined with Chinese hints that they may arm Russia with lethal weaponry against Ukraine, has raised tensions. At the same time, India's long-standing border issues remain generally unresolved. There was that troubling incident where there appeared to have been violent clashes at the end of last year in the high Himalayas. And so China will feature prominently. And so that will take us into a conversation on critical and emerging technologies,
right,
green infrastructure development, and ways to address China's threat in maritime domain, the Indian Ocean as well as the South China Sea.
Right. Mr. Atman Reddy, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast with all your insights on this.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.